Israel emerges from the Israeli-Arab War victorious, having survived the assault of several armies of Arab nations. The nation now has to deal with the aftermath of the war and has to deal with many of its effects, mostly its effects on the economy. Israel needs to find its place in the world, as the dominance of the socialist Mapai party may as well end. The new era in the history of Zionism could begin. That's not good English. Israel is at the crossroads, a nation whose demographics are altering radically with new immigrants coming in from the world over, and a nation who has just fought a war for its survival with less than stable politics. Damn, this is terrible English. How will Israel play its way to glory, greatness, and prosperity in this new strange world? I need help understanding the situation in Israel. For the last 20 years or so, Mapai has dominated the pre-state politics, and their dominance seems to continue even after independence. Several parties have arose to challenge the Mapai dominance: the centrist capitalists, general Zionists, the hardline socialists, the pro-USSR party Mapam, and the nationalistic Herut and religious parties. Ben-Gurion now leads a broad nation-building coalition, following his election victory in 1949, which included the General Zionists, the United Religions Front, and the Progressives. Mapai also believes in Mamlachtut, which supports giving the state authority to build up the nation, rather than giving it to socialist organizations and trade unions such as the Histadrut. Israel is at a clash of ideologies, a clash of ideas, and how to navigate the young state into the future, and the choice is yours. So, welcome back, everyone, to another glorious playthrough. This time brought to you by the Merchants Guild, obviously. The Israel lobby has bought me to play Israel in the Iron Curtain mod, and so yeah, this is gonna be quite fun. I will definitely treat this as kind of an exploratory game on some of what Iron Curtain is doing, but I mean, we're also gonna take a look at essentially Israel itself, because I've never actually done anything including Israel, right? I don't think so. So that's kind of interesting. Anyway, so we start off in a pretty rough spot. Now, obviously, as all of you know, what basically just happened in history is the Arab-Israeli War in 1948. And preceding that had been, well, ever since the Balfour Declaration in 1917, there was a whole lot of tension over the Palestine region, which legally, before the partition between, Israel and Palestine, at least in the legal terms, Palestine never actually existed on the map until the 80s. There we go. We have this. Rip the Maklik. You will be remembered, Maklik. We're going to take a look at that in a little bit. Before this, there was a whole bunch of tension between the Jews as they were essentially coming in from Europe because of all the Nazi shit and persecution, and also the Zionist movement sponsoring this Jewish immigration, or at this point, since we are in Tel Aviv, immigration to Palestine, and the local Arabs, which obviously created all the conflict and tension that we know and love. Anyway, we were having the arrival of new immigrants. So essentially, there were Jews that had essentially never left Palestine ever since, the ancient Israel was destroyed by essentially the Romans. Just completely wiping out all the remaining Jewish institutions, and later the Muslim conquest, but those were an extreme minority. Essentially, all the Jews were coming from either two main sources: from Europe, especially Eastern Europe, the so-called Ashkenazi Jews, and also the Yiddish from Central Europe. And essentially the other group were Sephardics, that are essentially Jews coming from the region of the Middle East or Iberia, that were then expelled into Morocco. Or again, other Jews that had lived in the diaspora in the Middle East, maybe in Turkey, maybe in Egypt, some in Yemen actually, quite a few in Iraq, quite a lot in Iraq in fact, and a few in Tunisia, Algeria, and a lot in Morocco. So essentially all of these were all starting to come back to Israel, and we have the arrival of new immigrants. Now, the Israel that we know and love is actually mostly a state dominated by the European Jews, the Ashkenazi. This is actually not something that is explained very often in a lot of documentaries about Israel or whatever. Israel within itself, the Jewish sphere within itself is divided, and so that's kind of something I find interesting. Anyway, we're having an arrival of new immigrants. So after lifting the British restrictions on Jewish immigration and securing our independence, the number of Jews moving from Israel to Israel from all around the world skyrocketed, with more Iraqi, Iranian, Moroccan, and Yemenite Jews moving in ever-increasing numbers. While the state will have to adjust in taking care of such a rapidly increasing population, the immigrants are full of joy and hope of reaching their new home where they shall be finally free. So we have the Jewish exodus to Israel, which grants us plus 50% monthly population. That's not that much. Probably should be a little bit more. And we get the claims of discrimination against the Olim. Now, the Olim are the immigrants that are coming in from other places. So we're gonna want to get the Olim, or well, the Ben Gurion government that is right now dominating wants to get the Olim on board, because essentially Mapai, which is the sort of social democratic Zionist party, the Mifleget Poalei Eretz Yisrael, the Workers' Party of the Land of Israel, often shortened to Mapai, is dominating in the politics of essentially local Jewish, communities, and also of European Jews that are coming in. But the Jews coming in from all, the rest of the world have to be convinced to be backing us. Now, we can do a few things. Of course, we joined the UN. We can do a few things. We can route them to Ayarot Pituach. Not sure what the fuck that's supposed to be. Assist the Jews arriving from Arab countries, and or build Ma'baraot. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but basically this leads into a number called Olim satisfaction, and if the Olim satisfaction rises high enough, we can prevent other parties such as Herut, the Herut movement, the freedom movement, from gaining too much support. Anyway, that's the basic start, the basic setup. Now, there are again a few factions that can rise to power in Israel. We're going to take a look at the focus tree right now. Essentially, there's a tiny part of the Israeli economy that is pretty strong, because you get a nuclear weapon manufacturing plant. Praise Yahweh. I'm not even actually sure how you say, the Jewish name for God, Yahweh or Yahweh or whatever the fuck. But praise Yahweh for just fucking nuclear reactor. Then there's a tiny army tree, but that's another thing that we're gonna get to do, just as a filler. The main one is obviously the political tree. There are a lot of possibilities, all revolving around the 1951 elections. So we can have a pro-Soviet Mapam victory. The Mapam are not Marxist-Leninist pro-Soviet, like, for example, the Italian Communist Party, the PC, or the French Communist Party, the PCF. But they are a bit like some of the hard labor factions, I suppose, or the whatever the fuck you called it, the West German KPD. Down here, the United Workers' Party, the Mifleget Hapoalim Habmehedut. I don't Jew, I'm sorry. Often shortened to Mapam, is a hardline socialist party with minor Marxist tendencies, and it's a merger of a whole ton of parties, essentially, they believe that Zionism can play a part of the world revolution, and believe that the USSR has made a mistake by adopting anti-Zionist tendencies. Now, this is actually something that needs to be explained. Within the world of European Jewish politics, there were two main currents. Palmach dissolved. Now, the Palmach are a kind of militia slash, like a political militia army. And they've been dissolved. They need to be depoliticized. They are too closely tied to the Mapam. Now, essentially all the leaders of the Jewish states that we know were pretty much anti-British and anti-Arab terrorists before 1948. So all the ancestors of the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, are kind of militia, underground, terrorists slash, whatever, rebel organizations. And the mainstream ones are obviously Zionist aligned, but they're also the more extreme ones, such as the pro-hard right sort of militia that were called the Ifni, I believe. And of course, as you saw, the Palmach that were more far left. And yeah, essentially, there were two main strands. There were the Zionists who wanted to create a Jewish state in Israel, and there were the Bundists, or whatever, that essentially were more left-leaning and wanted to improve the conditions of Jews within the home countries. Now, the Holocaust did kind of hand the game over to the Zionists, without really even it playing out. Anyway, time to Thailand, we don't care. East Turkestan declares its independence. This video has now been banned in China. And King Farouk goes to France. Now, Egypt right now is still a kingdom, where we can probably talk about their situation later on. So yeah, we get the complaints of the new Alim. Either we have to help them, or they will have to help themselves, and we are not evil gomonods. We don't support the state controlling everything, because that's communism. And so, they're going to have to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. So anyways, within Israel, we have, again, Mapam, that essentially they're pro-non-aligned movement slash pro-state economics, kibbutz, which are like Israeli, sort of almost collective farms, and pro-ultra welfare stuff. Now, Mapai is similar, but they're more nationalist. Like, for example, in the second election, Mapam gets to create a binational state. And Mapai does not, obviously, because Mapai is like the historical route, quote unquote. Then there's the general Zionists that are just like Jewish capitalists who would have thunk it. Sort of a little bit pro-Western, politics as a whole. And then there's the hard right, which are either the Herut Religious Alliance coalition, which is more about a Jewish Israel, while the Herut are sort of Jewish weird Nazbol kind of things that I'm sure we're gonna get to explore later on. Anyway, yeah, that's about it for the sort of Jewish political scene at the beginning. We can get these things, but I don't think that's necessary right now. And also, they've changed around all the laws a lot in a way that's kind of weird. Anyway, we should probably change around our social policies somewhat, because we have political power. Now, we're probably going to want to increase our tax rate to get more cash, because it would be a good idea to get some welfare, some glorious Jewish welfare. And right now we're gaining 1.3 billion, so we can afford a little bit of, for example, extra welfare spending to get more political power. Excellent. And yeah, the rest of the world is consolidating. It looks like Mr. Mao Zedong is going to complete the destruction of the Kuomintang reactionaries, or whatever you want to call them. And yeah, so in case you don't know, I'm not going to be playing the historical Ben-Gurion Mapai route. I am instead going to be looking towards the Herut, because that is what has been requested of me by my totally impartial backers. I am totally not a bot shill. Ooh, upgrade state. Development pre-industrial. Developed. Tech requirements not met. Amazing. Yeah, I don't think we want to upgrade this this desert over here, at least not yet. All right. So what else is there to talk about for an introduction? I honestly don't see anything else to do. So obviously, yeah. Right. The first political part of Focus Tree. So essentially, we're trying to survive, really, and repairing relations with the neighboring states. But it doesn't really work. So we got the Syrian armistice, but Syria is right now in a ridiculously unstable situation. They're, you know, having coups and counter coups all over the place. There is the hostile Kingdom of Jordan on our eastern end that are very much pro-British and supported by the British. We don't really have that many allies at this point in the world. Like the USSR and the United States support our independence out of various reasons, but they're not like none of those countries are going to be really interested in backing us. Our only really real ally is Czechoslovakia, who sells us their glorious guns. And yeah, that's quite sad. Discrimination from the new Olim. Yes, discriminate against the Olim. And yeah, we just kind of have to find our place in the world. So yeah, that's about it for the focus tree. You get a few things like the law of return, which is like you know, more essentially the whole idea of if you're a Jew anywhere and you can prove it, you can get to Israel and have a you know, Jewish citizenship, which I believe is still like existing. So you know, if you want to live in Israel, find a Jew in your family tree and some generations back, and you're gonna be there. And you get some manpower, you know, some recognitions around there, but it doesn't really matter. And yeah, so that's gonna be it for this first introduction to the glorious Jewish state. And hope you all enjoyed. I'll see you soon, and have a good one.